Have you ever noticed how quickly anger can take over your entire mind? One small trigger, a comment, a look, or even a memory, and suddenly it feels like you're on fire inside. But here's the truth. Anger is not something you have to live with. You can train your mind to stop feeding it. You can learn to control your reaction so deeply that anger doesn't even get a chance to live in you. Today, I'm going to walk you through the exact steps to never feel anger the same way again. Most people believe anger just shows up out of nowhere, like a switch being flipped. But that's not true. Anger has a starting point, and if you train your mind to notice it early, you can stop it before it ever takes over. The first step is recognition. And recognition isn't about judging yourself or blaming anyone else. It's about observing what is really happening in the moment. Anger usually begins with something small, a raised tone, a delayed response, a comment you didn't like, or even the look on someone's face. These little sparks are what your mind translates into threats, and before you even realize it, your emotions are running the show. The problem is most people never stop to notice that first spark. They only wake up once the fire is already burning. So how do you train your mind to catch it earlier? You start by paying attention to the signals your body gives you. Maybe it's the tightness in your chest, the heat in your face, your jaw clenching, your breathing speeding up. These physical signs are not random. They are your built-in alarm system. And most of us ignore them until it's too late. If you can catch those signals in the first 5 seconds, you've already taken control back. Because anger is not one big explosion. It's a buildup of tiny triggers that compound when you're not paying attention. Think of it like this: a driver cuts you off in traffic. Before the horn, before the yelling, before the hand gestures, there's a split second where your brain says, "That's not fair." That moment is the trigger. If you notice it, you can step in and redirect. If you don't, it snowballs. This is why awareness is the foundation of anger control. Without it, you're just reacting. With it, you're choosing. And the more you practice recognizing the trigger, the faster your brain gets at catching it. Over time, it becomes second nature. You sense the spark long before the fire even starts. The pause is where your power lies. Most people lose control of their anger because they skip right past it. Something happens, they feel that spark, and instantly they react. Words fly out, body language shifts, tone sharpens. By the time they realize it, damage is already done. But the truth is, between the trigger and the reaction, there is always a space. It might be small, it might be barely noticeable, but it's there. And training your mind to use that pause is what separates people who are controlled by their emotions from people who control their emotions. The pause doesn't have to be long. Sometimes it's one breath. Sometimes it's counting to 3. Sometimes it's looking away for a moment before you speak. The pause is not weakness, it's strategy. Because anger thrives on speed. The faster it moves, the stronger it feels. The slower you make it, the weaker it becomes. Think about the last time someone said something that offended you. Your brain wanted to jump in and defend itself immediately. That urge to reply without thinking, that's the pull of anger. But imagine if you had paused even for 2 seconds. Just 2 seconds to let your nervous system settle. In that space, you give yourself a chance to decide if what you're about to say is going to help or if it's just going to fuel the fire. Most people regret what they say in anger not because they didn't know better, but because they didn't pause long enough to remember what they actually wanted. And here's what's powerful: the more you practice pausing, the longer that space becomes. At first, you'll catch yourself maybe after one word slips out or after your tone already rises. But over time, you'll start noticing it sooner. You'll feel the words sitting on the edge of your tongue, and instead of letting them out, you'll let silence do the work for a moment. That silence is not empty. It's you regaining control. When you learn to pause, you stop giving the other person control over your reaction. You stop letting a moment of heat dictate the next hour or the next day of your life. The pause is where your mind remembers that your peace is worth more than being quick. One of the biggest reasons anger shows up so often is because we take everything personally. We attach our ego to every word, every action, every situation. When someone cuts us off in traffic, we don't just see it as a driver making a move on the road. We see it as an attack on us, like they disrespected us, like they had us specifically in mind when they made that choice. That's ego talking. And ego will convince you that everything is about you when most of the time it isn't. People act out of their own stress, their own frustration, their own impatience. But the ego says, no, this is about you. They meant to hurt you. They meant to disrespect you. And the moment you believe that, anger is right there waiting to take over. Detaching from ego doesn't mean you stop caring about yourself or you let people walk all over you. It means you stop giving your ego permission to tell stories that aren't true. Think about the last time someone said something in a tone you didn't like. Your mind probably jumped straight to, they don't respect me. They think I'm less. They're attacking me. But in reality, maybe they were just tired, maybe they were distracted, maybe their frustration had nothing to do with you at all. The ego hates that explanation because the ego wants to be the center of the story. But when you let go of that need, you start seeing things more clearly. You stop wasting your energy on battles that don't exist. The reason detaching from ego is so powerful is because it gives you freedom. Freedom from needing to win every argument. Freedom from needing to correct every misunderstanding. Freedom from chasing validation in every single interaction. When you stop putting your identity on the line every time someone else acts out, anger has nowhere to land. It loses its grip. You're not rejecting yourself by letting something go. You're rejecting your ego's need to prove itself in every moment. And that's what keeps you calm in situations that used to set you off instantly. When you remind yourself, this isn't about me, you take away the fuel that anger feeds on. You're no longer chained to someone else's behavior because your ego isn't dragging you into a fight that was never yours to begin with. Anger grows when the story in your head is built on only one perspective. And usually that perspective is the one that paints you as the victim. Something happens and the automatic thought is, this is unfair, this is wrong, this is against me. But what if you learn to reframe the situation? Reframing doesn't mean pretending bad things are good or excusing poor behavior. It means choosing to see it in a way that protects your peace instead of fueling your rage. Because most of the time, the way you interpret a situation is what decides how much anger you feel. If you tell yourself the story that this person is trying to humiliate you, of course you'll feel attacked. If you tell yourself the story that this person is having a bad day and taking it out on you, your anger doesn't have the same power. Same situation, different frame, completely different outcome inside your mind. Imagine you're waiting in line and someone cuts in front of you. The automatic thought is, they disrespected me, they think they're better than me. That story makes your blood pressure rise. But if you reframe it as, maybe they didn't notice, maybe they're in a rush for something serious, maybe it's not about me at all, you feel a different kind of energy. Not anger, but perspective. The event hasn't changed, but your experience of it has. That's the power of reframing. You can't always control what people do, but you can always choose how you interpret it. Reframing is a skill that gets stronger the more you practice it. At first, your mind will resist. It will want to stick to the most negative story possible because anger feels satisfying in the moment. But if you catch yourself and say, hold on, what else could this mean? You interrupt that pattern. You start training your brain to look for possibilities instead of insults. And each time you do it, anger loses more of its grip. Reframing doesn't erase the challenge, but it keeps you from being consumed by it. It turns every situation into an opportunity to protect your peace instead of proving your anger. And when you can consistently do that, you realize that the real power isn't in controlling others, it's in controlling the meaning you give to their actions. When anger shows up, the first thing it attacks is not your mind, it's your body. Your heart rate climbs, your muscles tighten, your voice rises, your breathing gets shallow. This is why anger feels so overpowering. Your body goes into fight mode before your brain has time to think clearly. And if you don't learn to interrupt that physical response, your words and actions will follow wherever your body is leading. The simplest and most powerful way to do that is by breathing and grounding yourself. It sounds almost too simple, but that's the point. Anger is fast, but breath slows it down. The moment you take a deep breath, you send a signal to your nervous system that you are not in danger. And when your body believes you're safe, your mind finally has space to think. Grounding yourself works the same way. It's about pulling your attention away from the storm in your head and bringing it back into the present moment. You can do it through physical touch, pressing your feet firmly into the ground, placing your hand on a solid surface, or even just noticing the texture of what's around you. You can do it through awareness, naming 5 things you see, 4 things you hear, 3 things you can touch. These small actions trick your mind into leaving the cycle of anger and re-entering reality because anger thrives in mental loops. It wants you to replay the insult, replay the disrespect, replay the story of how unfair this is. But the moment you breathe deeply and ground yourself in the present, you break that loop. You create just enough space to choose differently. Most people underestimate how much power there is in something as ordinary as a breath. But think about it. If you're about to say something you'll regret and you take one slow inhale through your nose, hold it, and exhale longer than you inhaled, you've already shifted your state. You've interrupted the automatic reaction. And maybe that one breath doesn't erase the anger, but it reduces it just enough for you to keep control. Do it twice, 3 times, and you'll notice your chest loosening, your jaw unclenching, your thoughts slowing down. That's not weakness. That's mastery. Training your mind not to feel anger isn't about never experiencing heat inside you. It's about having tools ready to cool it down the moment it rises. And breathing and grounding are the tools you carry everywhere with you. Anger thrives on assumptions. The second something happens that feels off, the mind jumps straight into building a story. And usually it's the worst one possible. They did that to disrespect me. They said that because they don't care about me. They ignored me because I'm not important. Those assumptions spark rage, and once rage takes over, it's hard to see anything else. But curiosity interrupts that pattern. Curiosity asks, instead of assuming, why did they act that way? What might be going on with them that I don't see? It shifts the focus from being personally attacked to trying to understand. And when you shift from rage to curiosity, you buy yourself time, you slow the reaction, and you make space for calm instead of combustion. Think about it. Someone snaps at you in a meeting. Rage says, they're disrespecting me in front of everyone. I need to snap back. Curiosity says, what's behind that? Are they stressed? Are they under pressure? Did something happen before this meeting that I don't know about? That small shift doesn't excuse bad behavior, but it changes your state. Instead of rising to match their heat, you lower yours to investigate. And most of the time, what you discover is that their behavior has less to do with you and more to do with something they're carrying themselves. Curiosity makes room for compassion, and compassion makes anger unnecessary. The challenge is that in the heat of the moment, curiosity doesn't feel natural. Rage feels natural because it's quick and protective. But if you train yourself to pause and ask a question, even a silent one in your own head, you rear out the energy. Instead of saying, they did this to me, you say, I wonder what led them to do that. And with that single thought, you've already weakened anger's grip. You're no longer feeding the fire with assumptions. You're cooling it with questions. Practicing this doesn't mean you'll always get the answers. Sometimes you won't know why someone acted the way they did. But the power isn't in solving the mystery, it's in redirecting your mind away from rage. Curiosity is not about finding perfect explanations, it's about choosing a mindset that protects your calm. Because once you start replacing assumptions with questions, you'll find that anger has fewer places to hide, and your reactions become less about defending yourself and more about understanding what's really happening in front of you. Anger isn't something you defeat once and never deal with again. It's like a muscle. You have to train it consistently if you want to stay strong in controlling it. Emotional discipline works the same way. If you only practice when you're already in a heated moment, you're too late. The real work happens in the small, everyday situations that seem unimportant. It's when you're waiting in traffic and someone cuts you off. It's when a text doesn't get answered as quickly as you'd like. It's when your plans change last minute and you feel that rush of frustration. These are the reps. Each time you choose patience instead of snapping, each time you let go of a small irritation instead of feeding it, you're building emotional discipline. And over time, those small choices add up into strength that shows up when you need it most. The mistake a lot of people make is thinking they'll suddenly have control in a big moment without ever practicing in the small ones. But that's like expecting to run a marathon without ever training. Discipline is built gradually. It's in noticing when your tone starts to rise and bringing it back down. It's in recognizing when your thoughts are spinning with annoyance and redirecting them before they take over. Every day offers dozens of chances to practice, and the more you take advantage of them, the more automatic your control becomes. It also helps to set intentional habits that strengthen your calm. Maybe it's starting your day with 5 minutes of deep breathing. Maybe it's journaling out your frustrations instead of carrying them. Maybe it's ending the night by reflecting on how you handled certain situations and where you could improve. These daily practices keep your mind trained, just like physical exercise keeps your body ready. Without them, anger will always feel heavier because you haven't conditioned yourself to carry it lightly. And the truth is, discipline doesn't always feel rewarding in the moment. Sometimes letting something go feels like a loss. Sometimes staying calm feels like you're holding back when you want to explode. But that's the practice. It's choosing long-term peace over short-term release. It's reminding yourself that every time you resist the urge to feed anger, you're strengthening your ability to stay in control the next time. Emotional discipline isn't built in one decision. It's built in the quiet, repeated decisions you make every single day. The ones nobody else sees, but the ones that make all the difference when it matters most. One of the biggest traps that feeds anger is the need to win the argument, to win the exchange, to win the moment. The ego convinces us that if we don't win, we lose, and if we lose, we look weak. But the truth is, most of the time, winning doesn't give you what you think it will. You might get the last word. You might prove your point. You might even embarrass the other person, but what do you feel after? Rarely peace. Usually it's just more tension, more distance, more frustration that lingers long after the words are gone. Winning gives you a flash of satisfaction, but peace gives you lasting strength. And if you train your mind to value peace over winning, anger stops having control over you. Think about the last argument you had where you felt the need to prove yourself right. You probably replayed your points in your head, thought about what you could have said differently, maybe even carried that energy for hours or days. That's the cost of chasing the win. Peace, on the other hand, is when you decide that the relationship matters more than the argument, that your calm matters more than your pride, that your mental clarity matters more than being seen as the one who's right. And choosing peace doesn't mean you never stand up for yourself. It means you don't let every disagreement turn into a battlefield. You learn which moments are worth your energy and which ones are worth letting go. There's a deep strength in being the person who doesn't need to win every time, because the one who can walk away calm is the one in control, the one who doesn't bite at every insult, who doesn't rise to every challenge, who doesn't need to prove something to feel secure. That's the person who carries peace like armor. And that armor is worth more than any argument you could ever win. Anger wants you to believe that winning will heal the frustration you feel, but peace is what actually heals it. Winning is about the other person, but peace is about you. And when you place a higher value on your peace than on your pride, you stop letting every situation drag you into conflict. You stop needing to prove yourself in every room. And you finally experience the kind of strength that doesn't need to shout to be heard at the end of the day. Anger will always try to find its way in. Life will always give you reasons to react, reasons to take offense, reasons to fight back. But the difference between living controlled by anger and living above it comes down to training. Training your mind to notice the triggers, to pause before reacting, to let go of ego, to reframe the story, to breathe and ground yourself, to choose curiosity, to practice emotional discipline, and to value peace more than pride. None of this happens overnight, and it doesn't mean you'll never feel the heat of anger again. It means you'll be ready for it when it comes. It means anger won't own you anymore. And when you live like that, calm becomes your default, clarity becomes your strength, and peace becomes your greatest win.